try and make it really quick. Congratulations. Are you ready?
Thank you.
I'd like to open the meeting of the Eagle Mountain Community Facilities District Board. Roll call, please.
Chairman Kavanaugh.
Here.
Board Member Yates.
Present.
Board Member Leger. Board Member Brown.
Here.
Board Member Hanson.
Here.
Vice Chair Elke.
Here.
Board Member Dickey.
Here.
Consideration of approving, any speaker cards on this?
No, Mayor.
No. Consideration of approving the Eagle Mountain Community Facilities District Board meeting minutes of June 6, 2013. There's no staff report. Can I get a motion, please?
Mayor, so moved.
Second.
Second?
Any speaker cards?
No, Chairman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consideration of resolution EMCFD 2013-03 approving the final budget of the district and levying a certain sum upon each $100 of valuation sufficient to raise the amounts estimated to be required in the annual budget specifically for the purpose of paying principal and interest upon bonded indebtedness, all for fiscal year ending June 30, 2014. Ken? Anything?
Chairman Kavanaugh, members of the board, Resolution 2013-3, Eagle Mountain Community Facilities District issued bonds in 1996 to repay the costs associated with the infrastructure improvements and are repaid annually from an ad valorem tax collected from the residents of the property owners within the district. 2012 assessed value for Eagle Mountain CFD is estimated at $23,722,994. And fiscal year 2013-14 budget is $425,235. Therefore, tax levy of approximately $1.84 will be provided sufficient revenue for the annual debt payment for the administrative costs. Bonds will be retired in 2021.
Any questions from the board? Any speaker cards?
No, Chairman.
Can I get a motion, please?
Mayor, so moved.
Any-
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And
Second.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll open the special session of the Cottonwood Maintenance District Board. Roll call, please.
Chairman Kavanaugh.
Here.
Councilmember Yates.
Present.
Board Member Leger.
Here.
Board Member Brown.
Here.
Board Member Hanson. Vice Chair Elke. Board Member Dickey.
Here.
Any speaker cards?
No, Chairman.
Consideration of approving the Cottonwood Maintenance District Board meeting minutes of June 6, 2013. No staff report on this. Can I get a motion?
Mayor, so moved.
And a second. Any speaker cards?
No, Chairman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consideration of Resolution CMD 2013-03 approving the final budget of the district for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2013 and ending June 30, 2014, and assessing a certain sum sufficient to raise the amount estimated to be required in the annual budget to provide funds for maintenance of certain pedestrian areas, parking, and parkways, all for such fiscal year. Okay.
Chairman Kavanaugh, members of the council, Resolution 2013-03, Cottonwoods Maintenance District was formed by the Town Council in June 1999 for the purposes of improving the common area for the Cottonwood subdivision. Town Council serves as the governing board for the district. Maintenance district provides for the maintenance of common area which performed by the town of Fountain Hills. Annual cost is repaid through an annual property tax assessment, $83.17 per property owner levied by the town and collected by Maricopa County, with an annual budget of $4,823 for the fiscal year.
Any questions or comments from the board? Any speaker cards?
No, Chairman.
Then I would like a motion to accept.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Now we will start our regular session and our special session. And we will start off with roll call, please.
Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Councilmember Yates.
Present.
Councilmember Leger.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Hanson.
Here.
Councilmember Dickey.
Here.
Vice Mayor Elke.
Here.
Everyone rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance and their invocation. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our invocation is Michelle Hasley, Director of Grief Ministries for North Chapel.
Thank you, Mayor.
Would you please bow with me? Dearest Lord, we humbly come before you, praising and thanking you for this wonderful town amongst your beautiful creation in the hills that you have blessed us with, for its beauty, the family and fellowship and friendships we hold dear, its governing body. And we ask, Lord, that you would lift them up tonight with your guidance, wisdom, and discernment, that it would be upon them with all the decisions that they have on their agenda before them this evening. We pray for your godly guidance to be upon them as the council gives its final approval to the proposed $41 million budget for the next fiscal year, for your spirit to be upon them as they consider the construction bids they have received for the renovation of the Avenue of the Fountains, and for the items they need to consider in conjunction with a budget from service agreements providing services to our town. Lord, we honor, praise, and thank you for all the blessings you so generously have shown us in this wonderful little town in the hills. Please bless our town of Fountain Hills as well as our town council tonight. In Jesus Christ's most holy name, we ask. Amen.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm going to exercise my privilege as mayor, and I'm going to rearrange the agenda so that we will begin with the recognition of Fountain Hills Fire Department Chief Scott LaGreca for 17 years of dedicated service to the citizens of the town of Fountain Hills. For some time, the town of Fountain Hills has planned to recognize the service of Fountain Hills Fire Department Chief Scott LaGreca. In fact, the plaque being presented this evening was already prepared in anticipation of that event. Scott LaGreca's passing makes this recognition tonight especially poignant. Tonight we want to celebrate the leadership and dedication of a man with 42 years of experience in education and fire services. He retired from the Chicago Fire Department after 25 years and has served the town of Fountain Hills nobly for the past 17 years. Chief LaGreca's wisdom, strength of character, and integrity were the driving force in making our hometown fire department excel. He led by example and earned the respect of his firefighters and all those who knew him. His presence had a profound impact on the Fountain Hills Fire Department and leaves our community with firefighters that have been schooled by the best. His dignity, honor, positive attitude, and friendship have been a source of inspiration to us all. And so tonight we have asked Chief LaGreca's wife, Chris, and his sons, Jason and Brian, to accept this recognition on his behalf, and I invite them to come up at this time to the podium. And I'll just tell you what it says on the plaque. Presented to Chief Scott LaGreca of Fountain Hills Fire Department in recognition of excellence and in gratitude for 17 years of dedicated service to the citizens of the town of Fountain Hills, Arizona, 1996 to 2013. Please join me. It's with great honor that I, as a mayor of Fountain Hills, am able to present this plaque to Chris, wife of Chief Scott LaGreca. begin with my mayor's report.
Mayor, may I think it's appropriate, I'd like to just share just a quick comment about Chief LaGreca. I think it's probably timely, and I don't know if fellow council members would like to as well, with your permission, Mayor. I didn't know Scott that long. I've been in town 7 years. I've been on the council for a little over 3 years now. And, he's a good man, and I don't have to tell all you that. But it was a privilege to know him. Whenever there was any question that I needed to have answered regarding fire district or fire department, the history of the district, and anything about the town as it related to the fire, Scott was the guy. And I found him always to be, he's a humble guy and always willing to chat and share information. The last time I saw Scott was at Portillo's down in Scottsdale. I think he and Chris were down there having lunch, and we were trying it out. And Scott, always looking out for town of Fountain Hills, he says, we need to get one of these up in Fountain Hills. I was talking about Portillo's. And I talked to him Friday before he passed away and made some tentative plans to get together with him the following week. And in chatting with him, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing this with all of his guys and his crew, I said, now that you're at home, or is your crew, you worried about them running around and acting up or anything? He said, no, I've trained Todd and Randy well enough, and they know well enough that if anything happens, I'll come down there and he didn't say put a foot in your butt, but that was pretty much what it was. And in true Scott fashion, when I asked him how you doing, he goes, well, I've been better. But no complaints, no nothing, and it was a privilege to know him, and thank you, Chris, for sharing him with the town of Fountain Hills.
Anyone else? Councilwoman Dickey?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here. I regret very much that I won't be here on the 6th, so I appreciate this opportunity to mention that Scott and Randy were the inspiration for my son becoming a firefighter in the city of Scottsdale. He went to U of A, and I have 3 sons too, so I absolutely relate to what your home life was like. We had such respect for him. He was a friend. He was, like I said, very much an inspiration for my son. Scott wanted the best for our town always. He wanted to keep our town safe. One of his dreams, I think, and it will come to fruition soon, would be to have that new fire station. I don't know, now that we're committed to doing that, he won't be standing side by side with us, but maybe at the time we could consider maybe naming it after our Chief LaGreca, and I wanted to thank you for sharing him with us for all these years.
And just so everyone knows that there will be a memorial service on July 6th at 11 a.m. at Shepherd of the Hills Church. And I will reserve my statement till then. Nothing else? I'll go on with the rest of the meeting. Does anyone has anything else they want to say? Thank you all for coming. Okay. We've got a lot to do this evening, so I will get started. First, my mayor's report. I attended once again the annual PICO Lunch, which is a nonprofit Pakistani group that brought us the Kite Festival in March. Several of the kite organizers expressed thanks to me for the town's help in putting on the festival. They singled out Brian Hughes as a great person to work with, and they were so pleased with how easy it was to work with our town that they are looking forward to making Fountain Hills the permanent home of the Kite Festival. And they are already scheduled for March of 2014. I also would like to add that what an incredible positive reaction from Fountain Hills and Arizona residents and citizens from across the country with the passage of our Animal Protection Ordinance at the last meeting. I asked for this ban on giving animals away as prizes because I believed it was the right thing to do for the animals' welfare and for all the parents out there. But I never expected to hear from people as far away as Philadelphia in support of our ordinance. It certainly has helped to put a very positive face on Fountain Hills and give us some very nice publicity. And I also, Bev doesn't mind, I'm going to say happy birthday to Bev. And to Joan, sitting in the back there, happy birthday.
Yay.
And now I have two proclamations to read. One is our proclamation for July, which is Parks and Recreation Month, and then it was decided that I would read today the August proclamation because that's on the drowning impact, and we just felt that by the time the first meeting in August, there's already been quite a bit of summertime and swimming, so we thought we'd like to read that proclamation today to remind everyone about the drowning impact. So I'll start with the July designation as Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the town of Fountain Hills, and whereas our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. And whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas the town of Fountain Hills recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. And we certainly do have a great Parks and Recreation Department right here. And now I will read the proclamation for August, Drowning Impact Awareness Month. Whereas Drowning Impact Awareness Month will raise awareness that the number and impact of child drownings in Arizona affects everyone. And whereas the drowning incidents in Arizona take the lives of the equivalent of a classroom of children each year. And whereas a child drowning can happen to any family regardless of education, race, or socioeconomic background. And whereas families can take simple steps to protect their children around water to avoid the tragedy of the unnecessary loss of life. And whereas water safety remains a priority for Arizona families, communities, and government. And whereas keeping children healthy and safe is the goal of the Fountain Hills Rural Metro Fire Department and other prevention institutions in Arizona. And whereas raising awareness will increase understanding, and education of effective ways to prevent drowning. Therefore, I, Linda M. Cavanaugh, Mayor of the Town of Fountain Hills, do hereby proclaim the month of August 2013 as Drowning Impact Awareness Month in Fountain Hills. Okay. Up next, our special guest, Arizona State Representative Michelle Ugenti, regarding matters relating to new legislation or anything that Michelle would like to talk to us about. Welcome, Representative Ugenti.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Mayor and Councilman. I appreciate the opportunity. Well, this is the first time that I've been here, so I thought I would first just introduce myself. I've met several of you formally, but some of you I haven't. And then we can kind of go in quickly for a little bit of a legislative kind of update. For any of you who have been following the news, it's been a little crazy down there. But I serve District 23, obviously, and you guys are included, Fountain Hills. My seatmate is John Cavanaugh, which is Mayor Cavanaugh's lovely husband. We have a great relationship and a great time down there. This is my second term. We have 2-year terms, and I chair the Government Committee, and I also sit on Appropriations along with Mr. Cavanaugh. I'm a mother of 3 kids. I have what do I have? A 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. Married about 8 years now. Met my husband playing rugby at Arizona State University. And before I got into this crazy world, and we all are crazy to get into politics, I was in commercial real estate, which seems very appealing during times like these. Okay, so a little bit on what's been going on. Well, what's been going on is we've been basically dominated by a budget and kind of Medicaid discussion and debate for the last several months. Sitting on appropriations, I can tell you that it has been quite contentious, as we have now kind of, and you know, and John has probably said this, but we've kind of now come out of that fiscal cloud, and we're into some good times, and we've seen revenues increase. But there's been a push to spend some of our reserve money, and there's been a push to, what I think, spend some additional funds a little too prematurely. I know all of you have to deal with the budget, and while we're in a healthier spot, we're not completely out of the woods quite yet. And so the debate down there for several months have been not just what kind of budget should we have, but what kind of things should we be funding, specifically expanding, like the Medicaid expansion. You probably all are aware that the Medicaid expansion, which increases those eligible for Medicaid, as well as restores the childless adult population, did pass the House as part of the budget and the Senate, and then signed by the governor. We spent probably 12 hours on the floor debating this on last Wednesday. And I don't know, debate may not be the best word because the other side didn't exactly engage, but we spent 12 hours nonetheless on the floor talking about this issue. I bring it up because no matter what side you're on the issue, it is important. It is a large part of our health care debate here in Arizona. We are increasing the rolls considerably. While we, in the short term, do get substantial help from the federal government via increased contribution rates, that's not something that's guaranteed, nor do we have an accurate idea about what that means for the future and if those increased contribution rates will be sustainable. I tend to believe that they won't, based on past experiences and promises from the federal government, but this is certainly kind of the crux of the debate down there. And only time will tell if this is something that the federal government will be able to help maintain, again, via their financial support, or if they end up rolling it back, in which case it will become the responsibility and burden of the general fund. That is very important because we have limited resources. I'm sure you guys are all aware when you manage your budgets that resources are not, well, you know, they're not everlasting, and you have to manage them. And with other priorities down at the state capitol, like education, health, other health and welfare interests, public safety, infrastructure, you know, we only have so much money, and there are a lot of needs. So time will tell to see if something like that is sustainable. Just to kind of give you some highlights on what was passed, I will tell you that the budget that was passed, and down there, you know, we're partisan. Down there, the budget was passed with all of the Democrats and then about 8 Republicans. This is something that is very unusual when you have a one-party-dominated House and we have a Republican-dominated House. So this is something very unusual to participate in and see and be a part of. So this was a budget that I didn't support, nor did I vote for on the floor, but just some highlights about it. It spends about $100 million more over the next 3 years. It does increase education spending, roughly about $2.4 million this year, and that money will go to a study committee to determine how they're going to spend $70 million on performance funding for teachers. Not something I'm opposed to at all, but something that's a large ticket item, and certainly I would have appreciated a debate on. There also increased Department of Economic Security funding by another $9 million, higher education funding by another $5 million. State employees across the board got a 5% pay increase on top of a pay increase they got last year. These are some of the major highlights. And time will tell to see if this is a budget that also stays in the red. The revenue projections that this budget used are much more robust, or rosy, if you would like to say, compared to the revenue projections of the budget that the House Appropriations Committee had put out. This is a really important factor because if your revenue projections aren't what you say they are, and then you're allocating or doing your spending accordingly to those increased projections, you can run into shortfalls. So again, this budget will see what really happens in the next coming years and see exactly if those revenue projections maintain. In a perfect world, I mean, I hope they do. I hope that we have I would love to be wrong. I tend to want to have the most conservative and prudent revenue projections, and then I rather be proven wrong and delighted by newfound money and a much more robust economy. But we'll see if indeed it happens. I also wanted to touch on TPT, right? I'm not sure how much you guys... You're not tired of talking about it. I see everyone's face light up. No, I'm just joking. Well, you know, this wasn't my main area of that I concentrated on during this session for 2 reasons. One, it's not in a committee that I sat on or chaired, but 2, I had John Kavanaugh and Linda Kavanaugh kind of leading that charge. So I would like to thank the mayor for all of her input, help, time and energy that you spent on the issue. It got quite complicated. John Kavanaugh would constantly give me updates, and I was like, oh, God, I'm kind of glad I'm not a part of it. when the governor first kind of introduced the plan, it wasn't, you guys would probably all know, probably better than I did, well received. And then there were lots of communication and issues with, they shut out the league during negotiations, which left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths down at the Capitol. But then there were still people that really wanted some of these reforms. And it looked like nothing was going to happen, and I was getting updates from John and Linda, and of course it's Scottsdale as well. And then this is like something strange that always happens on Sine Die. Weird things die, but then like weird things come alive too. I don't know. It's kind of like a full moon. But they ended up getting an agreement, the league, with the business community and those pushing the effort and the governor. So per that last-minute agreement, which was emailed out, I can't remember, late into the night, people felt comfortable that the cities indeed were okay with the bill in that current form, which allowed it to come, allowed it at least to get voted out with bipartisan support overwhelming bipartisan support in the House and the Senate, and of course signed by the governor. And you know, as you all know, this was one of her many priorities. And she got it done, but it wasn't without, you know, quite a fight. And I have to be honest, toward the end of session, I don't know, I didn't think it was going to pass. I wasn't feeling like it was going to pass. So I was too surprised at that last-minute effort to find a resolution between the two groups, and pleasantly happy to be able to support something that these cities were at least okay with. So there was that, and that happened on Sine Die. Like I said, a lot of things happen on Sine Die. And let me tell you about it. This Sine Die was particularly full of surprises because we were having trouble getting the Medicaid issue resolved, so there was kind of a moratorium on many of the bills she was going to sign. So a lot of the stuff was getting backed up, and it really didn't get flushed out until the last day anyway. So this isn't necessarily typical, but happened this time around. For me, let's see, I had a variety of different bills. I had a couple election bills. I had some other public safety bills. But I think maybe the relevant ones for you guys was consolidated elections. Many of you know I passed consolidated elections last year, and this effort is now being, it's in court, being litigated. Phoenix is suing along with Tucson, or I should say Tucson filed the lawsuit and Phoenix has joined. They're going to court at the end of July. They just got an extension. I am participating in the lawsuit, and I have submitted comments in support of the law, and I have reached out to those who are supportive of it and have asked them to do the same, and many have. Where you guys come into play, that there were some tweaks that needed to happen, and we finally got those done. We kind of, in short, call them the consolidated election fixes, but one of them is to give direction about term lengths for council, and working collaboratively with the league, they highlighted certain fixes that they wanted, and I had no problem accommodating those fixes and getting them done and dropping the bill myself. And clarifying anything that needed clarifying and helping them get the bill across the aisle. The bill I introduced was probably one of the first bills I introduced this session. I don't know what it is. I was the first to introduce most of my bills, and I think I was like the last to get them through the process. But when you're betting on horses, that's not a good game. You don't want to be first out of the gate and then last across the finish line. But we ultimately got them done, so your fixes are done, and she did sign them today, as of probably 2 hours ago. So the consolidated election fixes, and those that you may have been concerned that there were some issues that were not addressed, they certainly are. And to that extent, if there's anything else that I can fix or address as it relates to consolidated elections, I certainly will. I have no problem doing that, and I was happy to be a champion for that bill with the league. Now, as far as the lawsuit, I certainly don't know how that's going to shake out. I do anticipate that it gets appealed all the way up to the Arizona Supreme Court, however, I know it's something that Phoenix is passionately pursuing, and those advocating for the bill are equally as passionate to make sure it happens. So that's still kind of out there until we get the litigation accomplished. And I don't know, as far as any other major issues, I think as far as the league was concerned, they did they're playing played a lot of whack-a-mole this year with bills. They had a couple priorities, which was these fixes as well as TPT. There was a handful of other bills that they were, if you get their emails, watching, that I don't think ever amounted to much that I think they're fine with. So I think the city's had a successful year, but there's always next year. I think that the league was very happy with how everything turned out. I know I was. Ultimately, I think that the cities are in a good position. I had a kind of interesting experience, first coming in with the league and starting with consolidated elections. But because I sit on government and do a lot of municipal and county legislation and bills, I've actually had an opportunity to build a really great relationship with the league. And I hope, and I believe it has, extended to certainly many members on this council and the mayor, and that also goes for Scottsdale, the mayor of Scottsdale, and the many councilmen and members of the city of Scottsdale. So with that, I can kind of open up with any particular questions you had. I would say it was a successful year, and hopefully next year it won't be as contentious. But next year there's a whole new it's election year next year, and whenever there's an election year, you get a whole new kind of political environment down at the Capitol. So it's always interesting. And with that, I'll open it up with questions and end with thank you so much for allowing me to come here and speak tonight.
Well, thank you for joining us, taking time out and coming to see us. I want to thank you for your help on the TPT. Even though you weren't involved in those meetings, it was very, very hard to actually get in those meetings.
Yeah.
We were lucky that some of the mayors were invited, so there were actually only 2 legislators that were allowed to be in there. But just in its original form, the governor knowing that you were a negative vote on that in its original form certainly facilitated the changes that were made. And so I do appreciate that right from the start we knew that you were a no vote on it because of the great harm that it was going to be doing to our town.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, there weren't a lot of legislators that were allowed to participate intimately.
Right. There were 2.
Yeah, there were 2.
were
Yeah,
2.
for such a big issue and the way it affected all the cities. I mean, just to have 2 legislators is pretty astonishing. I mean, I do stakeholder meetings all the time, and there's a boatload of people in there, and legislators all over the place. So but at the same time, being able to just be forthcoming with where I was on it, I think did help similarly with the other members too. And I do remember talking with the chamber and some other folks that were really pushing the bill, and every time I was like, nope, nope, nope. It helps because at the end of the day, you can't get around vote counting. I mean, you don't want your bill failing in front of you on the board. So it's important. And I think that, me and others who were able to do that helped leverage at the last minute kind of the deal that you guys were able to.
Because they knew it was going to be.
Because it was either that or it wasn't going to happen. And that kind of goes along with, I didn't think it was going to happen, but I'm glad you guys got a resolution.
And we'll probably be asking you for some fixes next time.
I do fix as well. So I'm fine.
And the only other thing that I want to thank you for, even though the animal protection didn't go through, I know why it didn't. One senator who had it, he held it and refused to let it go to a floor vote. But I know that you were a yes vote on that. I know that last year you got an award from the Humane Society. So I knew that you would be a yes vote, and that was important to me. And we did pass the ban here for our town, and hopefully others, we can work on that in 2015 when we get a new legislative seat.
Yes, and I was happy to support that, and that actually flew out of the House.
Yeah.
We heard it in a probe.
Full support.
What was it?
It got into
Where did it go in the Senate?
Pierce,
Oh,
and he refused to hear it, and that's why it died. We couldn't do anything else from there.
no, yep,
And that was because of the agricultural lobby
correct.
influencing him, even though John had put some of their concessions in there. So, I don't know. The Humane Society is now talking about actually maybe doing a referendum that will go to a vote of the people, which,
Really?
to the agricultural lobby's surprise, is not going to have any concessions in it. So they would have been better off taking the bill with the concessions, because I think they're going to get the full referendum from the people. So, but thank you for that. Does anyone else have questions? Councilwoman Dickey?
Thank you, Mayor. Representative Eugenie, thank you for coming. The consolidated election bill, you know that this council was opposed to it last year because of the ramifications to us. We didn't really have the ramifications with the terms because we actually had our spring elections, so we didn't really have to worry about getting them extended. But our main concern had to do with mail-in ballots. And what was the fix for that? Or I don't exactly remember how that came about. Maybe Bev can remember. But what will happen to us November of 14, where we were used to having all mail-in ballots?
Yep, that's a great question. And you can still have all mail-in ballots. That was a misconception out there by the counties. But as you know, the league didn't at all address mail-in ballots in these fixes. And that is because there isn't anything to address with the all mail-in ballots. That was something that was brought up last year, and immediately when I heard about the towns who are all mail-in ballots and wanted to make sure they could maintain their all mail-in ballot and not have separate ballots for their city and then their state or county issues, in my bill per the county, there's language in there to accommodate the cities to make sure that those ballots can be combined and your all mail-in status is maintained. So you shouldn't have any problems.
The reason I was asking about it is because the primary ballots can't be just all mail-in ballots that way. So I guess I haven't really heard what the fix will be on that, because you'll have people in Fountain Hills who will expect to get a mail-in ballot, but I don't think they can get one for the primary unless they ask. So by turning our elections into a partisan election, it seems like that's still going to be a little bit of a confusion, I guess.
I don't know if we turn them into partisan elections.
Well, Mayor, in November 14, in other words, we have to have our city elections, which normally are not, which ours are nonpartisan. Thank goodness, because as the only Democrat up here, we vote alike a lot as opposed to the legislature. But you can't have all mail-in ballots in your primary.
Why not?
Because they have to declare which ballot they want. So
No, they just put them on both. I don't. I mean, you're not going to have a problem. And if you are confused, I would love to sit down with you and then bring in the county, because the issue with mail-in ballots was really heavily vetted. And I spent. Let me say this too. I spent all summer reaching out to all of the cities that I thought had concerns. I met with the mayors who responded back to me. I drove up to their towns. I did conference calls. I had some mayors come into my office. I sent letters. So I did a lot to make sure that any issue that the towns had, I was going to gather it all up during the interim, and then with the league put together the fixes. So if there's, and it sounds like there's some confusion, and it's okay, because a lot of the time when I went out to the other cities, mail-in ballot seemed to be like where some of the confusion was, and once we walked it through and explained, most of that was alleviated. So I'd love to do that with you, because I'm pretty sure I'm almost positive you're not going to have any issues. So if we want to get together with the county and everything, because the goal with consolidated elections isn't to adjust mail-in ballots. So maybe we can do that. That way you feel good and confident, and we can make sure we get in the right people so that you get your questions
a
answered.
suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? Vice Mayor.
Representative Ugenti, thank you very much for coming out here. We really appreciate the update.
You're welcome.
And thank you also for your service to the state. As we all know up on the dais, it's certainly a sacrifice personally and professionally, and it takes up a lot of time, so I want to thank you for your time. Much like the state of Arizona doesn't like the Fed telling it what to do, the town, we similarly enjoy our autonomy out here and enjoy our independence out here. And we've had to be reactive, thank you. We've had to be reactive to a few things that have come down as far as the state. And obviously there's unintended consequences, and you're not always going to please all the cities and towns. But some of the things that have come down that we've had to deal with is, and just let me preface it with this, as a town, and as I'm sure you know this, we rely heavily on sales tax and state shared revenues, as we don't have a primary property tax for the town of Fountain Hills. And I think that speaks to our independence out here, that we aren't in favor of a lot of taxes. And as a town, our budget has gone down dramatically, perhaps over the course of the past 4 or 5 years, about a third, I think it is, and our staff have gone down probably more than 50%. And we've adjusted and we've balanced our budget every year. But with that being said, some of the things, just to be aware that we've as I'm sure you're aware, with the ADWR fee, I think we were the last city or town to hold out to pay that.
Right.
That was something that kind of struck us, especially for a town such as ours that doesn't own the water company, as a fee we shouldn't have had to pay. The TPT, understandably, that there were some last-minute changes that won't affect the town as much, but the projections, at least from what I understand, there's going to be some reductions in the revenue that the town sees as well, which is further going to tighten our belt. And somewhat of a lesser issue, but I was reminded with the fire department that was up here, was the passage of fireworks, allowing them to be sold statewide. And so we can have them sold here in Fountain Hills, but they can't shoot them here in Fountain Hills because of our town ordinance. So those are just some of the things, and then of course HERF, and the money's there. So I just say all these things. Now, I'm not trying to. I want to be as respectful as possible. I want to communicate also the things that we've had to deal with, and it's been very tough over the past 2.5 years, and I know it has at the legislature as well. And I just hope, as there's more revenues that are coming in with the state will let those monies come down to the cities and towns.
No, I think that's an excellent point. It's not. You're good to bring it up. On TPT, I mean, you have an advocate, and so for fixes, for changes, for reworking, that you have somebody there that can champion that and be on your side. The fireworks bill, I agree. I think I voted against that. If you're talking about the most recent, there was one we did just this last session, right? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. So I'm with you there. And then what was the other one?
It was ADWR fee.
Right, and I think we spoke early on about that issue, and there's some, and we fixed it in the budget, but you still were in some litigation issues.
It wasn't retroactive.
Right.
Yeah.
We still had to pay it, but...
I agree. I agree. You're, again, if to the extent that I can continue to help with that, I mean, I agree. That was a big bill for you guys to swallow, and I know that we talked about it, and we talked about it early on, especially since, it wasn't necessarily something that applied to you guys. So I understand that, and you have to balance a budget, and I know that's very challenging, and when you have to deal with the state and what we're going to do and the monies that you're getting in and not being able to always anticipate that stuff. I know that that's very hard. And like I said, chairing government has really allowed me to kind of understand some of the city's more complex issues. So I'm here to help. We can't always agree, but that's never the goal because that's not practical. But I mean, you really have someone who wants to do everything they can for their municipalities, and if it makes sense and I can get it done, I'll do it. And not everything is necessarily needs legislation. A lot of things can be done behind the scenes, and I'm open to doing that too. And any kind of fixes you guys need. And you can always just call me. I'm going to bring up one other point. This reminds me of something from consolidated elections. call me. A lot of the times, I only hear through the cities from like a league member to a league member to a staff to the staff, and I never get like the cities. So I love hearing from the council people and the mayor. I mean, texting, call me on my cell, it's so much more direct, and it allows me to understand the scope of the issue a lot faster. It doesn't get watered down and other people's agendas get put into it. So if you have an issue or concern, then give me a buzz. And I'd be more than happy to help or fix it, or at least have a conversation about it. I'd really like to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
I know I've grabbed you at more than one social occasion.
Yeah, no, I know. You know what? It's better that way. I much prefer that. It's very helpful.
Yeah. Anything else? All right, well, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I'm sure Frank is waiting at home with the kids.
Yes, he's got the 3 kids, Mr. Mom of the Year.
Yeah. Okay. All right, our next is a presentation from the Mayor's Youth Council related to their public service announcements created this year in recognition of Fountain Hills High School student Mayor's Youth Council member Kaylin George's video award from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. And Heather's going to come up, and I have something to read, but Heather can come up, start coming up. As you know, we've had a very active Mayor's Youth Council this year with 16 high school students committed to serving the community and learning firsthand about how local and state government works. This year was a great re-energizing of the Mayor's Youth Council, included the assistance of Mike Chiccarone, helping with the technical areas utilized, and Heather Ware serving as the advisor to the program. It became a very solid group, with all members wanting to return this fall and recruit some friends, but also to keep it small as they liked the community aspect of the group. During the year, we had an overnight retreat where we bonded and learned about how to obtain leadership skills. We cleaned Westby Street several times through the Adopt a Street program. We've made gingerbread houses for display at the community center during the holidays and then gave them to homebound residents in town. The Mayor's Youth Council also decorated a Christmas tree this year and helped out at the community center event, painted over a graffiti wall in a wash for Make a Difference Day, and we took a field trip to the Capitol and learned firsthand how a bill becomes law from our own legislator, John Kavanaugh. There, we also attended a press conference with Governor Brewer. We've also held regular meetings twice a month and are currently working on a full calendar for the upcoming year. I'd like to let Heather talk about a project that they're going to share with you tonight. Personally, I would just like to add that I am so proud of the students for what they have accomplished, their energy, and their willingness to help the community. And I certainly could not have done this without Heather and Mike. So thank you to both of you for everything that you've done. We had to start from scratch, and build this program up. Some of the other students would have liked to be here, but as you know, it's summer and a lot of them are away. So we have 3 wonderful representatives here with us. Heather?
Indeed. Thank you, Mayor Kavanaugh and council members. I'm at the tail end of a bronchial injustice, so bear with my voice. I'd like to introduce to you the 3 who are here of the 16 members. So starting from your left is Jessica Morello, Casey Hubbard, and Kaylin George. In addition to all of the activities that the mayor has outlined, the youth council members have also been involved all year long in creating and editing or filming and editing their own public service announcements. They had 2 subjects that they covered, substance abuse and texting while driving. All of the public service announcements are going to be aired on our own Channel 11 and are currently on the Mayor's Youth Council website and on Facebook. One of the public service announcements created by our summer intern, Kaylin George, took 2nd place in a statewide contest held by the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. It's a contest, a teen video contest called My Message. And the contest is aimed for aspiring filmmakers like Kaylin who submitted 25-second public service announcements aimed at discouraging teen use of illegal drugs, alcohol, and/or misuse of prescription drugs. Kaylin's entry is also going to be shown along with the other Mayor's Youth Council public service announcements and at the high school and our drug coalition here in town. This summer, as an intern, Kaylin is in the process of creating a video for our art docent program, as well as a public service announcement for the Give a Lift program. It's been a terrific year, and I invite you to enjoy the public service announcements. Their works.
So that everybody in town can see them. And I know the coalition is grateful for you making them. Great job. Great job. Thank you. All right. Yes, sure.
Doing all those things, how do you have time to go to class?
Oh, it's amazing what they do. All right, let's go on to call to the public. Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Okay. All right, consent agenda. That's a long one. Consideration of approving the Town Council meeting minutes from June 6, 2013. Consideration of approving a liquor license application submitted by Kimmy's, located at 13014 North Saguaro Boulevard, for a Series 12 licensed restaurant. Consideration of confirming appointments by Mayor Kavanaugh as follows: to serve the Town Council subcommittees for the purpose of interviewing applicants for the town's boards and commissions fiscal year 2013 to 14, and they are all listed on the agenda. Consideration of approving Resolution 2013-29, abandoning portions of the certain public utility and drainage easements at 15743 East Thistle Drive. For 5 to 8, I just wanted to remind the public that all of these items have already been budgeted for. They are not requiring additional funding. Number 5 is approving amendment number 1 between Pavement Marketing Incorporated and the town pavement markings not to exceed $88,000. Consideration of approving amendment number 1 between Nesbitt Contracting Company Incorporated and the town for asphalt replacement and miscellaneous work not to exceed $906,000. Consideration of approving amendment number 1 between Southwest Slurry Seal Incorporated and the town for microservicing not to exceed $820,000. Consideration of approving amendment number 2 between Cactus Asphalt and the town for crack sealing not to exceed $186,000. Consideration of approving a purchase agreement between the town and L.N. Curtis & Sons for 20 self-contained breathing apparatus in the amount of $73,449.06. Consideration of approving the professional services agreement between the town and the Horizon Real Estate Group Incorporated to promote commercial business in Fountain Hills in accordance with the adopted Fountain Hills Economic Development Plan. Consideration of Resolution 2013-34, approving a memorandum of understanding with Maricopa County related to medical countermeasures. Consideration of approving the First Amendment between the town and AT&T Wireless PCS LL for a cellular communications tower at 9810 North Technology Drive. Can I have a motion to accept the consent
Mayor, so
agenda
moved.
as listed? And a second, please.
Second.
And I need a roll call.
Councilmember Dickey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Elke?
Aye.
Councilmember Leger?
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson?
Aye.
Councilmember Yates?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
And Mayor Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Mayor 7-0.
Okay, we will now go on to the regular agenda items. Number 1 is consideration of approving a special event liquor license application submitted by the Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 7507 for the purpose of a fundraiser in conjunction with the 4th at the Fountain event scheduled for Thursday, July 4th, 2013 from 4 to 10 p.m. at Fountain Park. There is no staff report. Can I get a motion
Mayor, so moved.
and a second?
Second.
Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Any council discussion on this item?
Just a correction, Mayor. Well, one thing, I'll be abstaining from this vote as I'm the promoter for the event, but it's 5 to 10 p.m.
It's 5 to 10.
Well, that's the event times are 5 to 10 p.m. They may have submitted it for 4 to 10 so they can set up, but the event is from 5 to 10 p.m.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 6-0.
Consideration of a professional service agreement with Arizona Business Advisors, LLC, in the amount of $4,500 to operate and manage Jumpstart Biz, a business incubator program designed for the development of entrepreneurial businesses in the town of Fountain Hills. We need a separate motion for each of these. If there's any council discussion, you can say you want to discuss it. Otherwise, I'll just ask for a motion and a second and then a vote, unless anyone wants to further discuss these. Can I get a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second?
Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Consideration of professional services agreement with Extended Hands Food Bank in the amount of $24,200 for the fiscal period July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2014 to provide food and social service referral for Fountain Hills residents. Is there any council
So moved.
discussion?
Oh, sorry. So
No-
moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Any further council discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Consideration of a professional services agreement with Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce for tourism in the amount of $103,000 for the fiscal period July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2014 to promote tourism in Fountain Hills. Is there any council discussion? Councilwoman Hanson?
Mayor, I just wanted to point out, I was a little confused when we talked about this. I believe it was in a May budget meeting. I guess I just got the impression we were, the program's been building up over the last 5 years and broadening its scope and expanding. And I was just surprised to learn that we were going with a different marketing firm. I was not aware of that when we were having the discussions in May. The previous consulting firm was a local firm, and now we've been informed that the new firm is a Scottsdale firm. And I just wish that we'd had the opportunity to have all of that information during the earlier budget discussions. And I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Dickey?
Thank you, Mayor. And earlier actually last year in November, and then when we went through some of these budget discussions, I expressed some concern about the idea of this funding not being available for the economic development plan, and I know we'll be talking about that later. But I just wanted to, again, bring that up, and especially in light of the changes that happened when I think we initially approved this. So basically, I think that as we see the presentation about the economic development implementation and what that might mean as far as tourism and even other items on here, Jumpstart or whatever, to see that maybe we see how that all plays out in the coming year. Like Councilwoman Hanson was saying, I think there was a little bit of information that we didn't have at the time, and at this point, right now, we're going forward, but I think it'll be interesting and good for us to see how this all plays in with economic development as the year goes on.
Any other comments? Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
All right, can I get a motion
Mayor, so moved.
and a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Consideration of professional services agreement with Fountain Hills Community Theater in the amount of $70,240 for the fiscal period July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2014 to provide general theater productions and workshop camp support for Fountain Hills residents. Any council discussion?
Mayor, just that I'll be abstaining.
Okay, that's why we've got them all separate, so you could vote on all the rest.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
And can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Yates?
Nay.
Councilmember Leger?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Elke?
Aye.
And Mayor Kavanaugh.
Nay.
Mayor, 4-2.
Consideration of a professional services agreement with Boys and Girls Clubs of Scottsdale, McKee Branch, in the amount of $64,000 for the fiscal period July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2014, to provide teen activity programs to include academic success, good character and citizenship, and healthy lifestyle for Fountain Hills residents. Any council discussion? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And a roll, any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Hanson?
Aye.
Councilmember Leger?
Aye.
Councilmember Dickey?
Aye.
Councilmember Yates?
Nay.
Vice Mayor Elke? Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
And Mayor Kavanaugh.
Nay.
Mayor, 5-2.
Consideration of Resolution 2013-31, accepting the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission's recommendation to Council regarding implementation of the Economic Development Plan approved by the Council on March 21, 2013, and incorporating the strategically organized approach into the Economic Development Plan accordingly.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council. Again, the council approved an economic plan back in the Fountain Hills Economic Development Plan back in March of 13, with the exception of an implementation strategy plan, and called for town manager and the Strategic Planning Action Committee Advisory Committee to research and recommend a strategy for its implementation. We asked for a local citizen, Ms. Peggy Fiandaga, who has experience in these areas, to assist the process and development of strategy. Over the course of 3 meetings that we held, reviewing with the review of this, provided an in-depth review of the economic development best practices and trends in organizational structure and the Arizona municipalities and how they consider and how they approach their economic development plans. It's been pointed out that while private nonprofit economic development organizations have previously been a popular enterprise, the trend in Arizona has been led to formalize economic development efforts being managed within the local governments. That said, SPAC established 7 criteria for developing the successful economic development program. That was accountability, economic development expertise, key stakeholder involvement, local focus, public-private partnerships, single points of contact, and sustained funding sources. SPAC identified the universe of implementation options to explore the Fountain Hills model, using the defined criteria and weighing the pros and cons of the above, as I mentioned, the criteria. Potential organizational options, SPAC recommended the establishment of an economic development program led by the Office of the Town Manager, recognizing the current resource limitations of the town, and recommending the development of a resource board to assist the town manager regarding the economic development program. So the resource board will act as a board of directors, providing guidance to the policy-related matters and serving through the direction of the town manager. Meeting on the quarterly basis, the resource board will then consist of representatives from the 16 areas that's in your packet. I won't go into those unless you have any questions regarding any of those. It's a recommendation of SPAC to direct the town manager to move forward with the implementation of the economic development program by establishing a resource board as outlined, with the program evaluation occurring annually as part of the budget process. Ultimately, in the economic development program, if successful, SPAC recommends the working for long-term transitioning to a 501c3 or a C6 organization and private funding. With the recommendation for the Resolution 2013-31 accepts the SPAC recommendations to the Town Council regarding the implementation of that Economic Development Plan approved last March 21st, 2013, and incorporating the strategically organized approach into the Economic Development Plan accordingly as written. I would be happy to answer any further questions or concerns. I know that the member that was designated by the SPAC is here. Ms. Thomas, to answer any questions you might have, any specifically regarding the plan and the language that's recommended.
not specifically about the plan, but I just want to thank SPAC for all the work they did on this. I attended the meeting where they were having their very lengthy discussion. It was a long meeting, and it was a good one. They were very serious about working on this plan to make it a success. And I also want to extend a special thanks to Peggy Fiandaca for all of the hours that she put into helping us put this plan together and also working with the SPAC. Are there any questions from council? Councilwoman Hanson.
Mayor, I was just there was so much comprehensive work done on this, I was kind of surprised that we didn't have maybe a joint session with SPAC to kind of go over how they arrived at their implementation of this. And one of the things that kind of just jumped out at me was the identification of the stakeholder groups. That's always kind of a touchy thing because you don't know if you're leaving somebody out or maybe what the idea behind the inclusion of like some of the utilities in that. And one thing that I noticed was that the Business Alliance wasn't on the list. And since the Chamber is on there, and I know the Business Alliance kind of has an additional direction, and it might be who the stakeholder group to include them as well. And there could very well be others. I know retail interests were covered, but contracting interests really weren't. So I think, looking at that list, that would be one area that might deserve a little more discussion.
Anyone else? Councilman Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have several concerns about the Resolution 213-31. I see this as forming a commission, and this commission could become a permanent commission that would be around to advise another commission continuously, and I don't think we need a commission to advise a commission. Lastly, we have a good next we have a good economic development plan that needs to be implemented. I am a business person, and I can honestly tell you that I would have no idea how to implement, nor could I even participate in a conversation representing how we could implement this plan. And I see that we've got the stakeholders. I don't see anybody, or maybe they do, maybe there is somebody on here that actually has a strong background in economic development, but I don't see this. I see these as extremely good business people. Good business people, good operators do not necessarily make good economic development directors. And if we go forward with this, I think we should have a work study session, or before we move this forward, I feel like we should have a work study session or a joint session, as Councilmember Hanson recommended, with SPAC to see and how this was all formulated. Because at this point in time, I'm not comfortable at all with it.
Ken, do you feel comfortable with answering some of those concerns since you were at the meeting, and perhaps Audra might be able to?
If the council wants to have a meeting with the SPAC, I mean, we can certainly set that up and have a joint meeting and talk about it in depth. That might be the better course of action to take.
And I guess if this particular stakeholder group is a problem, we could always look at other options, like just having consultants available for Ken to discuss this with, rather than having. I had a little reservation about having a big group, only because it's a big group, and are you actually going to resolve anything or just keep rehashing, and how are you going to make a decision with so many people involved? I'd be more comfortable with it being directed by Ken, and he would have the option to call on experts to assist him when he needs it, which he's done in the past in order to establish the original plan. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank SPAC for taking this on. I know that it was at the request of the council to look at this and how we're going to implement the economic development plan. There's no shortage of smart people in town. There's no shortage of people willing to offer their opinion about how things should be done, and there's a lot of people that have wonderful experience that their opinions should be heeded. We've adopted an economic development plan that needs to be implemented. And what it boils down to is the use a military analogy, the boots on the ground. Who's going to implement the economic development plan that we've adopted, as opposed to a think tank or a great group of resources, which the list that I see there, those resources are already available to Ken and to staff. There's nothing stopping Ken on his own, or our town manager, excuse me, on his own, from calling a meeting or asking these stakeholders to come in and say, hey, we want to talk about X, Y, or Z. And I don't see that it needs to necessarily be a council resolution that we create this body. Also, I had some concerns about an elected official serving on that council, on that commission as well. I know everything can be tweaked, but with respect to that, I think it would need to be the professionals out there. It needs to be staff and the professionals, and not elected officials. And for me, I just don't. I want our town manager to be successful, and I want him to have the resources available to him. But I think these ones are there, and I don't think that we need a resolution from council to tell the town manager to be doing something that he already has the authority to do.
Yes, Councilman Leger.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may, I think I'm ready to move forward with the motion this evening on all of this. And if you could bear with me, I did write down a few notes, and I'd like to kind of go through these notes as a rationale for a motion that I propose to make at the end of my comment. But before I do that, not knowing how the dialogue was going to go this evening, I have a tendency to agree with the notion that comments that everyone's made this evening. I mean, how do you arrive at these particular stakeholders? Are there stakeholders here that are missing? Possibly. A group of this size can be unwieldy. And there are many other concerns and issues that I have listed here, but I'm not going to go into those. But if you bear with me, I just want to put this thing into perspective for myself and hopefully the citizenry. We have talked about this for a long time. And I wrote some notes down here because there's a history, and I want to very briefly, and I'm going to read it so I can move through it a little faster. The genesis of the current economic plan started in 2010 with the input from the Business Vitality Advisory Committee. It was also influenced heavily by the community-driven strategic plan. Components of the plan were outlined by our previous economic development administrator and the town manager in 2011, with input from community members, the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission, as well as, once again, the Business Vitality Advisory Committee, which was a group of members, staff from the town, members of the business community. As a matter of fact, when the Business Vitality Advisory Committee Council started off, it had pretty much the same host of people that are on this list, so I kind of see this as kind of a redo to a certain extent. Let me read on here. The plan has been vetted by the town council, this town council, modified slightly and updated in its present form by the town manager and SPAC once again. And as you may recall, this council unanimously approved moving forward with the economic development plan in its current form. I think that one of my concerns about the plan is it's an awesome plan, and there's a lot of pieces to it, and it's extremely complicated. And given that, we don't want to create a burden for Ken, or if he brings in contract labor to help with this. I think it's really important that we focus, and maybe that's what we need to talk more about. And I think we need to focus on what we've talked about in the past, which is business attraction, as a focus in the targeted segments that are already in the business economic development plan. That goes without saying. The plan has been committed to death. This plan has been committed to death. No disrespect to SPAC. We don't need another commission. We asked SPAC for a recommendation. They did awesome work. They worked hard. They used experts. And they came back to us with two recommendations that I've extracted, and one I want to mention because it's going to be part of my motion. There, of course, was the advisory board, which we've talked about as a group this evening, But there was also an economic development matrix that was presented back to council, and if we've reviewed the packet, we've all had an opportunity to see that. One of the things we did ask SPAC was to prioritize. Our economic development plan had action steps in them, but they weren't prioritized. And I think SPAC did an awesome job prioritizing them as short, medium, and long term. It makes it more manageable. So I definitely accept that recommendation from SPAC, and that's something I'd like to include, and I will in my motion moving forward. Let me read on here, and I'll be through with this. The plan has been committed, as I've mentioned, by many people. It's time to identify contract labor to implement the plan under the direction of the town manager, utilizing funding targeted for this purpose. For those of you who have followed our budgetary discussion, and prior to that, we created a resolution that took an unfunded mandate and created funding out of the excise tax exclusively to be utilized to implement the plan. And that is where we should provide Ken the tool to utilize that for, as was stated, boots on the ground. And I'll kind of leave it at that. It goes without saying what has been said here, and I have written down here, is that the town manager has the responsibility and always has the authority to interface with any stakeholder group he chooses to. And as I look at this list, and it's a very nice list that was put together by SPAC, he probably currently is interfacing with most of those people. There are people that are not on here, and I think as we move forward with the economic development plan, it will be situation-oriented. And there will be people that are outside of this group that really need to be in the mix in decision-making. And that's why, in some respects, this is comprehensive, but it doesn't hit all bases. So thank you, Mayor, for letting me kind of indulge in that. I felt the need to historically talk about this, and the point is, I don't believe we need another commission or an advisory committee. We need to begin implementing this plan. So with that being said, I'll make a motion here, and of course we can move to discuss it. I move to adopt the economic development matrix prescribed by SPAC and incorporate it as an integral component of the existing economic development plan. Thank you.
Second.
Discussion on the motion? Councilman Brown?
I appreciate the motion. I still feel that I would like to try to put together a work-study session with SPAC, even to go over the matrix that has been assembled. I have several questions and thoughts on the matrix that I would like to have answered. And if at all possible, maybe on one of our earlier August, September work-study sessions, if there's an opening, if we could possibly address this with SPAC, I would appreciate it. If not, I clearly understand. I can get together with them one-on-one and probably get my answers.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. One of the other things to consider is we will be contracting with an individual or a company to assist us with implementing the economic development plan. We have yet to do that, so I think that particular entity or person should be involved in the process as well as we go forward. So I think before we do anything, and perhaps even before, if we do conduct a joint meeting with SPAC, that we have that done first before we go forward.
Madam Mayor.
Councilman,
No.
go.
Thank you, Henry, and thank you for the background. And SPAC, thank you for all the hours and time you put into that. As many of you know, as many of us up here, I sat on the BVAC group, and lots of energy, same stakeholders, same goals. And when I read through this again, it was like deja vu all over again. My concern is there's lots and lots and lots of moving parts, and when we complicate things, it concerns me. I guess I'm more leaning towards the side of let's sit down and kind of come up with. I appreciate comprehensive, but I want to keep it easy. I believe in the free market. I believe in letting the market tell us what to do. I see this as another redo. I appreciate that we need a group to put the boots on the ground, so to speak. But I'm more leaning towards, I think we should sit down and kind of come up with a joint effort now that we have all this information. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Sorry.
Councilwoman.
Just, Mayor, I think it sounds like people are more comfortable with waiting, but I just wanted to mention, too, that I wanted to thank some of the members I was able to ask some questions, and it seems to be kind of focusing on the resource board maybe a little bit too heavily, and but I think the rest of everything else is really what we want, but just judging on what I'm hearing here, I'm okay with doing a work study session with them too, but I just feel like maybe we were going a little bit too heavy on the resource board and kind of taking that as the whole thing, but there's a lot of stuff here that is really in line with what we want.
All right, well, I have a motion and a second.
Mayor, if I
and
may, I have a
let's get
comment, please.
Excuse me?
Excuse me, I have a comment, please.
Go ahead.
Is that acceptable? Yes, very good. I can kind of see the way this is leaning, and that is something that can work for me. I think my point was that the resource board, I think, was over the top, and I was trying to parcel out the parts. What concerns me, however, is that SPAC has put a lot of work into this and have done it over several meetings. We've had joint sessions with them before. We've talked about this. We've been having this discussion since 2010. If you want to sit down and have another discussion with them, that's all fine and good. They've provided us a product, a matrix, and if you've looked at it closely, it's basically taken what is in our original plan and they've put a strategy. That's the strategy. They've created short, medium, and long-term goals. Obviously, we're going to be bringing in contract resource. We have a broker coming on board. And if you look closely at the matrix, particularly with some of the short-term goals, a lot of these fall into staff areas and staff responsibility. So I'm not quite sure how much more we're going to accomplish that we haven't talked about. I respect the work they've done. It mirrors the work that was in the plan. We asked them to prioritize. They came back with their priority. So what are we going to do? Sit down with them and go back and forth on the priorities? If you looked at them closely, they align with the current plan that we've approved. I'm all for high involvement governance. I'm all in, in strategic planning, and I think that's how I ended up here, starting with that particular group. But the bottom line is that it's time to move this thing forward. It's time to basically say to our town manager, here you go, here's the plan, here's an organized group of tasks, go to it, use your resources, and there's nothing that precludes us then from sitting down with SPAC as we manage our way through the process. So I'm not sure what we gain by sitting down again and questioning the product they've already come up with, which we've been around the block on it. And it does mirror the matrix that we had in our plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I just would like to comment that I do like the plan. I did read through it, and I wasn't in favor of it, but I would be reluctant to go ahead with something knowing that there are so many unanswered questions from my fellow councilmen, and if they would rather have a work study and discuss some of these issues because they feel uncomfortable with implementing this right now, I can certainly understand that and go along with that. Councilwoman Dickey, did you want to make one more comment?
No, just that, to go along with what Henry said, I think even though we haven't brought anybody on board yet, maybe, again, since this is a result of something that we've said that we want, maybe that's not the worst thing in the world then either, than to have it already in place. So I don't know how I feel, right? I mean, I'm in favor of going ahead with it, but if everybody wants to wait, obviously I want to respect that.
Councilman Brown?
And I respect Councilman Leger's comments, and once again, I think the matrix is very doable. I will have one-on-ones with SPAC to have my questions answered, if I'm the only one that feels that way, and I have no problem with that at all. Thank you.
And Councilman Yates, you feel
Sorry, Tate.
comfortable going forward with this?
I'm
knowing
comfortable with,
that-
thank you, Mayor, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm comfortable with the matrix. It's still back to who's physically doing it. And although I have sat on those boards and people go on and off those boards and the personal responsibility of whose job is it to go recruit ABC company or meet with ABC company, and I know everyone on that group is very capable, but it reminds me back to what has happened in the past, is that we get this energy, we bring this to a head, and there's a gap there, there's missing. So I need, I guess, I don't even want to call it reassurance, but I just kind of want a more structured path of how we're going to get that done, getting a group of 16 people or however many this pans out and hand them this matrix. Although I agree with Councilmember Leger, it's wonderful, it's very, very concise and easy, but it still doesn't answer who's doing it, right? Ken, ultimately, he needs to do it, so he needs to do it how he sees fit. So I'm more apt to meet and kind of go over that again. Seeing a 16-person board and handing them that, I don't want to set anybody up for failure.
Well, I believe the motion, if I understand it, excludes the 16-person committee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
I would be in favor of just moving forward, and I mean, we've, as a council and SPAC, we've integrated through the motion. I know we haven't voted on it yet, but if it passes, it integrates SPAC's recommendation, the matrix. We beat this to death, and then we beat it some more. And I think it's time that we implement it, much like we've done some other things where we've talked about it a lot. We've given Ken his marching orders. He knows what he's supposed to do. He knows that he has the funds to do it. He's going to get an outside contractor to assist. I think it's the responsibility of the town manager and that outside contractor to meet with the stakeholders, go talk to SPAC, go take care of those things, because that's why we're paying them to do it. We've given them marching orders. We don't need to beat this up anymore. I think sometimes we become so sensitive to stakeholder input that it causes us to freeze and not do anything at all, because we want to make sure we hear from everybody, and then hear from them again, and then hear from them again. I don't want to, I'm certainly not putting down stakeholder input whatsoever, but there does come a time that you need to do action. I think that time is long past, and I think we should go forward.
Well, as I understand it, this motion is calling for action without the stakeholder group.
That's correct.
Correct?
Would you like me to repeat the motion?
Could you please do that?
Sure. And just a point of clarity, that Councilman Yates, I'm really sensitive to your historical perspective that a lot of good thoughts in the past, but no boots on the ground. And as we all recall, this council unanimously passed a resolution to dedicate and appropriate money from 0.1% of the downtown fund, 60% of that, and there's money in there for our town manager to work with. And contract labor is what we're going to look at, because my thinking is, as we move through this plan and the matrix that's been proposed, the expertise needed is probably going to shift, and we may want to look at different contract resources as we move along. So the motion has nothing to do with the advisory board, so by default it left it out, but I will read the motion once again.
Thank you.
I move to adopt the economic development matrix prescribed by SPAC and incorporate it as an integral component of the existing economic development plan. Thank you, Mayor.
And I already have a second, and I'd like to call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Okay, thank you. All right, you're up to number 8, consideration of accepting bid of J.E. Bowen Construction LLC in the amount of $1,415,455.03 for the Avenue of the Fountains median improvements. Ken and Paul.
Mayor, members of the council, I'm just going to give a brief overview of the timeline of the project. It has been going on for probably over 2 years, but on December 20th of 2012, council approved the design contract with Landmark Design. Then on January 17th of 2013, council approved the median concept plan that was put together by the designer. We went through the design process. On April 29th, we advertised the invitation for bids. It was put on the town's website, and it was also advertised in the Fountain Hills Times and the Arizona Business Gazette. The project included a base bid plus 4 bid alternates. Bid alternate A was a revised plaza and fountain in the center of the west half of the median. Alternate B was brick paver pathway in lieu of a concrete pathway. Alternate C was for 8 shade structures spread throughout the project. And alternate D was for the lighting package. It included pedestrian lighting and some uplighting. There was a mandatory pre-bid conference held on May 14th. On May 29th, the bids were due, and we received bids from 4 contractors. J.E. Bowen Construction was determined to be the low bidder for the base bid and any combination of the bid alternates. Staff called the references that J.E. Bowen had listed in their bid. Staff also verified J.E. Bowen's contractor license, as well as the contractor licenses of their subcontractors with the Registrar of Contractors, and found no issues. In working with the town attorney, staff issued the notice of apparent lowest responsible bidder to the 4 companies that submitted bids, that J.E. Bowen was the low bidder for the project, and staff was recommending the base bid plus alternates A, C, and D. It is staff's recommendation that the council award the contract to J.E. Bowen in the amount of $1,415,455.03 for the base median project plus alternates A, C, and D. If council wishes to add alternate B for the brick pavers, that would increase the contract price by $22,470, making the total $1,437,925.03. Staff would anticipate issuing a notice to proceed if the contract is approved by July 1st. That would put the final completion date per the 125 days in the contract at November 4th, and that would be barring any major weather delays or unforeseen conditions. The contract does include, the contractor has to include 5 days for weather delays. Speaking with the contractor before the meeting, I did not know this before. The owner of J.E. Bowen was the project manager for the construction company that did the north side of the avenue, and they also have the same superintendent that did that project, as well as projects in the park. At this time, be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Beth, do we have anyone from the public that wanted to speak on this?
Yes, Mayor. 1, Jerry Kirkendall.
Okay. Why don't we hear from our public first? Hey, Jerry.
Jerry Kirkendall. How do you do? Anyway, I'm just kind of confused on everything they're actually going to do or not, because I've been to so many meetings. They've been going to this for a couple of years. They said, actually, we've been going over this for over 15 years, because everything was done at one time by 2000. So I get a little, so a couple of things I'm hoping they'll do, but I don't know. Whatever it is, I hope you go, do it, though. So the money doesn't get used for something else. I mean, we need to get this going, but I think to finish it off would be good. One of the most important things, I think, of course, is lights. I hope that's in this phase of it. That's really the only thing that's going to really maybe draw business. And they can do things at night in May and October when the weather's good for it, and extend the season by a couple months that way. I hope that they do, well, they're not going to do the restroom thing, which I was for, but I've already, heard they're not going to do that. The like bicycle racks, little things, checkers, maybe chess sets, and we put some shade things up above like they have at the playgrounds or something like that. A small music setup. But I hope that little things like this are included. But the most important thing, I think, is I hope they do the lights. Another thing I'd like to say, I don't know why they haven't done this, but at the other end of the avenue, they have that cut-through. So a lot of people use that. You go down, you want to go back up the other way, you cut through and come back up. Well, it's the same thing at the other end. It's just as hard to go up that street and try to get back around. You really can't do it in a safe manner. If they make a cut through up there, just like you do at the other end, work at one end and work at the other. And I think it'd be kind of nice to do this stuff at the same time. But whatever they do, I hope they get doing it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. So Jerry's question is, are there lights
Yep,
included?
I can answer the questions. Bid alternate D is the lighting package. Just off the top of my head, I believe there's 18 pedestrian lights spread throughout the pathway up and down the median. There's lighting when you enter the different plazas. There's some gabion walls and columns, and there's lights on top of those columns. There's lighting under each of the 8 shade canopies, and then there's uplighting at the existing art pieces that we will be relocating and at the nodes for future art pieces. In the 2 center plazas, I believe at each plaza, one of the tables at each plaza will have a tabletop that has the checkerboard pattern on there, so somebody could play checkers or chess. There are bike racks spread throughout the project. As far as the music setup, there's electricity, and that would be available if somebody had a setup they wanted to do. And there is not a cut through on the west side. We debated that, and there's issues with the MCSO driveway and different things. So I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Questions?
Madam Mayor.
Councilman Yates.
Paul, I know we've discussed this, and first I want to thank you and Ken and the staff for getting this put together and getting it. I realize we had a really tight schedule to get this, and for us to be at this point is tremendous, so thank you very much. Based on your experience, a project this size and scope, do you feel 4 months is enough time?
Mayor, Councilmember Yates, the contract is for 4 months. The intent was to try to get it done prior to the art fair. It's a tight schedule. More time would be better, but we have the art fair. No contractors made any comments on the 125-day schedule one way or the other, not being enough.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to also thank staff and Landmark for putting together an incredible project in such a short amount of time. I'd also like to thank the contractors that took the time to bid this project. But as of tonight, I will not be supporting moving this project forward due to the pricing that we set several months ago. All 4 of the contractors have come in higher than what the budget was that we had discussed. And this is a great project, and I hope we're able to come together and move forward at a later date. I see 2 possible reasons as to why the prices were a little higher than I expected to see, and I believe these problems can be dealt with and can be resolved on a future bid. We should have given the contractors more time to assemble their proposals. Number 2, we put a 4-month start to complete timeline on this project, which could possibly cause the price to go up. The original timeline start to complete was 6 months, with a full month after the project was closed out for the median to be matured prior to the next event. And here are my recommendations. I'm going to recommend that staff rewrite the bid documents and have a bid opening mid-March of 2014 with a start date in early April. After that, after the last event in March, which is the Thunderbirds Art Show, this will give staff adequate time to assemble the request for proposals. It will give the contractors adequate time to present a good, solid proposal, and it will also give us 6 full months to complete the project, plus 1 month prior to the first event in November. And here are some of my concerns and fears that are weighing heavily on me. Our November fair could be a total disaster if we have any delays, any natural delays, if we have a wet fall, if we are short material. I mean, it's a typical It's a typical construction project, but we are absolutely running it right down to the wire, and we could have a total disaster for our fair, and that would be devastating to the town of Fountain Hills. And as it stands, even if they got the project completely done, we're going to be looking at a 6-foot fence that will completely encompass the median, and it will not even let the vendors have access to the median short of just plugging in their power. They won't be able to utilize it like they have year after year. And this 6-foot tall fence will look bad. In fact, as nice as the median will look, it will look like an upscale prison waiting for inmates. Again, I will not support moving this project forward at this time, but I would like to see it rebid in the spring of 2014. And with that, I'd be glad to make a motion.
Do you want to make a motion now? or-
Yes.
Go right ahead.
I move to reject all 4 of the proposals, ask staff to assemble a new bid document for a March 2014 bid opening and a start date on or about April 1st of 2014.
Second.
All right, now I'll open that up for discussion. Councilman Hanson.
Based on what Dennis said, I just wanted to comment, if we do postpone this to ensure that the fairs will go forward successfully, that just gives the vendors one more fair season to enjoy the shade provided by the 30 trees that will be coming down.
Oh,
Cassie.
she had to get that in.
Jab.
Well, I had discussed this with staff, too, before the meeting. I know originally we had said April was the ideal month to start, and now we're already at the end of June. And so we have a lot of events coming up, not only the fair, but our farmers market, the Thunderbird artists, all of these, we wanted to make sure. The lighting of the trees. So I was very concerned. I was also disappointed that it came in at 1.4 when we were hoping for 1.2. So I will defer to my colleagues here who know a great deal about construction. Any other discussion before I call for the vote? All right. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Consideration of approving a license agreement with Cox Communication for a period of 10 years. Ken?
Mayor, members of the council, as you know, the Cox license effectively expired with an extension given to July 1st of 13. The grant of the authority calls for a 10-year non-exclusive license to run July 1st, 2013 to June 30th, 2023 with 5% annual fee with an estimated $330,000 in general fund for use and convenience of the rights-of-ways and conduct business within the corporate limits. Just some highlights briefly. The term, again, it's the 10 years with an option to renew. You have a license fee, as I mentioned. The drop, there was some language regarding the standard drop length. We settled on 175 feet. I believe that the previous was 250. The government channels stay the same. The location drops, again, there's some language in there that we agreed with Cox on. If a property owner changes their mind and Cox doesn't want to be penalized if a property owner changes its mind and later requests service to be installed under commercial density terms, and we agreed with that. Lastly, the local business office, there was a number of considerable discussion regarding that. With federal law that basically is the base of the discussion, that federal law requires that business office that's conveniently located during normal business hours, and the provisions don't really define either conveniently located nor normal business hours. So we both rolled up our sleeves and discussed it further, and we feel that there's a compromise that was reached, that the local business office, if it's outside the town limits, only on a temporary basis for a 6-month period total, for a limited overall duration of the 10-year term to only be 9 months in any of those 10 years. So this language was intended to keep the customer service or local business accountable to the local residents so that we could recognize that there may be times when no due fault of Cox of its own, it's able to quickly secure a location for a local office either independently or through a third party. It is a staff recommendation to recommend approval of the Cox Communications license, and I know that Mr. Stoll is here from Cox, should you have any further questions of me or of Cox Communication.
Do you have any speaker cards on this, Bev?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Council discussion? Councilwoman Hanson.
And actually, Ken, my question is about this office. I was a little confused on how would this work? I mean, it makes it sound like, well, for 6 months they might be in an office space in town, and then another 6 they'd move out of town. I mean, is this like a rotating office?
Right now they have a third party. And if, let's say that agreement goes away and they're forced to look for another third party or do their own, the maximum that they could be away is a 13-mile area for that convenience, which is actually their existing office on 101 in Scottsdale. But out of the 10 years, it can only be 9 months total aggregate they can be out of town.
Okay. It sounded like a... Where are they this month?
Any other council discussion? All right.
Just only to say that Mr. Stoll drives a hard bargain, and he had me worn down to the nub.
And actually, can I...
Sure, go ahead.
Can we do anything about all the paid programming on the Cox stations that's overtaking so many of the stations? And I know the answer is no, but it's really frustrating.
You don't want to answer that, right?
No?
Oh, he's brave.
Glutton for punishment.
Madam Mayor, Michael Stoll with Cox Communications. Believe me, I'd like to do the same thing, but under federal law, we're required to carry a lot of that stuff, so we can't unfortunately remove it.
It's taken over. It's taken over.
Can I get a motion on this?
Mayor, I'll move to approve the license agreement with Cox Communication for a period of 10 years.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you for coming. Consideration of approving an agreement with the law offices, Mark Iacovino, for providing services as the town prosecutor in the amount of $110,000.
Again, Mayor and members of the council, as directed by the mayor and council, in front of you tonight is agreement for contract for legal services for prosecution for criminal cases in the Fountain Hills Municipal Court. Scope of the services are pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. Compensation is $110,000 was the same annually, and the term is 1 year with automatic 1-year renewals unless either party gives a 60-day notification not to renew. Staff recommendation to approve the contract.
Deb, do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
All right. Any council discussion on this? Vice Mayor?
Mayor, I know we've discussed this quite a bit, and I just want to provide kind of a refresher of sorts. I'm pleased now that we do have a contract that's on the table because we have a contract with our town manager, we've got a contract with our town magistrate, and I think it's important that we also have a contract with our town prosecutor, who is not an official town employee. With respect to the contract terms, it would be my recommendation that the contract be for a 2-year term. However, for this first initial term, that it run concurrent with our judge's term. I think it's necessary for future council to be revisiting this every year. When you're looking at the judge's contract as we do, we should be looking at the prosecutor's contract as well. I'm not in favor of the auto renewal if 60 days notice is not given, although we do have the ability to cancel it at any time. I think it should be for a fixed term, and if the council wants to continue contracting with that particular individual, they should. With respect to the liability, I contract with 2 municipalities and a county, and I'm required to have $1 million, $2 million insurance, $1 million per incident, $2 million aggregate. The concern that I had when I learned that we didn't have the additional insurance, or we weren't an additional insured on our town prosecutor's contract, caused me some concern because I think that posed a liability as far as the town's concerned. With that, I think we should have a higher liability coverage, which I think is fairly common in the industry, $1 million per incident, $2 million annual aggregate as well. It just makes good sense and provides additional coverage as far as the town is concerned. Now, with respect to the amount, as far as the contract is concerned, what's being proposed is a flat $110,000 per year. Now, from the statistics that we were given before, we have stats from basically 2000 until 2013, and the projected number of cases are included in there as well. Now, these are criminal cases that are filed that you'd expect our prosecutor to handle. And from 2000 to 2010, the lowest number of cases that our town prosecutor handled, the criminal filings, of course, are 841, which is in 2006, and the highest was in 2001, which was 1,473. Now, all other years between between 2002 and 2010, they were at or about 1,000 or just a little bit below that mark. Now, from fiscal years 10, 11 forward, we've had the number of criminal cases filed. We've had 551 in 10, 11, 581 in 11, 12, in 12, 13, 516, and projected this year is probably going to be about 525. We've obviously seen a dip in criminal filings and hopefully a dip in crime in the town of Fountain Hills, which I think is a very good thing and certainly a testament to our sheriff's office, sheriff's deputies doing work here in town. With that, because of the reduction in cases, which doesn't appear to be an anomaly because we now have 3 years in which the filings have gone down, I would propose that the contract be offered at a reduced amount of $80,000 per year. I'm comfortable if we want to extend that contract to Mr. Iacovino. However, in the future, I would suggest that the council put it out for RFP so that we can see what the market is at that time. And also, being a little forward-thinking, if the council agrees with the reduction, when we're going out for bid again or we're looking at the contract again, we're not starting at this high amount that's disproportionate to the number of cases that have been filed.
Well, I'm a little taken aback by this because we have had in the past lengthy discussion about the service that we do get from Mr. Iacovino and how the cost of having him and his full office at our disposal is reasonable for $110,000, considering what the price is to contract out for services. So I'm surprised that there is some disagreement now on your part on the salary. Mr. Iacovino certainly can't control the amount of crime that we have. It is what it is, and if our crime is going down, I think that's great. But there's also a lot more involved in the town prosecutor's office and the services that he renders to us other than just his day in court. So I think that, we've already had lengthy discussions on this and also with Mr. Iacovino, and I think that this is maybe like a ninth hour, something that I would not agree to doing at this time. If we want to look at this at another time, perhaps, but I think this has been vetted at quite a few meetings, including our retreat, where we discussed that this was a fair amount for Mr. Iacovino. So I would not like to change this at this time, since we're at this point where we've already discussed it over and over again, and we seem to have had an agreement that we would keep it as it is. Is there any other comment from anyone else? Councilman Brown?
I don't know that we actually had an agreement to where we'd keep it where it is. I concur with a lot of what Tate has said, or Vice Mayor Elke has come up with. I don't agree with the 90,000 or the 80,000. If you do the calculations, he is now getting paid more than double what he was getting paid in the days of 1,000 crimes a year. And I also was an advocate, you'll recall, that I feel like that we need to eventually put this on the street. And I say this because I've had not 2 but 3 local attorneys contact me and talk to me about this very subject, about what's it going to take to really right the ship here. And if I hadn't have been contacted, I would feel spot on that we should look at Mark and keep Mark. And I think we should keep Mark, but I sure think we need to look at the salary range he's in, because at this point in time he's getting paid at about $200 a case, whereas in the past it has been $96 to $127 a case. I mean, it's pretty simple math. And I have to agree that I also like the idea of making the contract concurrent with the judge. I thought that was well stated. I don't know if I would do it, I don't know that I would do it concurrent. I would do it every other year, so we weren't talking about both of the legal entities at Fountain Hills simultaneously. But other than that, I concur with Vice Mayor Elke.
Any other discussion? Councilwoman Dickey?
Thank you, Mayor. We have talked about this a lot, but we haven't had any conclusions. So I think that's kind of what we were leading at when we had that one meeting where we said, let's bring something back. We thought it was going to be before this, but it is now. We talked about more responsibilities and duties, but I don't think that this has really added anything. Maybe between what you two have said, I agree with your facts and figures, but if you want to go back and just say, well, that was a long time ago, and then by sort of combining those things that, yes, it's double, but from what Vice Mayor said, that would be a fair, because we're living in 2013 now. So I'm okay with your with the amount, and I'm okay with your alternating between the judge and the prosecutor.
Councilman Yates?
Thank you. I don't dare get in the legal arena, or at least I try not to, and so I appreciate your input. But I view this as we did not bid this out as a cost per case or a cost per hour. I view this is a contract for a service, so whether he does 10, 20, or 1,000, we're getting the same service. And what I wouldn't want to do is setting the precedence now, and let's say we do get a spike in crime or something else happens. Now you're setting a precedence. Oh, well, 80,000, that was for 400 cases. I had 800, you owe me 160. That's my simple math there. So I'm kind of viewing this similar to what the mayor's saying. We have talked about this. It's a contract. I'm all for trying to find a better deal out there, definitely, but I just hesitate in changing how we structure a contract like this, and now we're saying it price per case. Imagine all of our staff if we say price per permit or price per inspection, et cetera. Whether our staff is there to do 10 permits or 100 permits, we still pay them to be there the full 40 hours a week. So I'm leaning more towards we're getting a full package here. Let's keep it as is.
Councilman Hanson?
I concur with Cecil. What came to mind, it would be like, okay, the town is not in as much litigation as it has been in the past, so then why don't we look at Andrew's contract and reduce that? So I don't really see the connection there, plus the fact there are other things that the prosecutor, the other services that they provide other than just the cases. And it was a good example about per permit and, that type of thing, that, we don't do that anywhere else, so why would we do that here?
And I think you also had a good point that what if suddenly there's a spike in crime and you're paying him so much considering what it was, it could just as easily change. And I agree with you, we should be going on a contract, not a piecemeal basis.
Mayor?
Vice Mayor? Councilman Leger?
Thank you, Mayor. I was, throughout the discussion, I've been a real supporter of Mark, and I think had done some calculations in the past, even when the caseload was going down, and thought that for the dollar. We were getting good return on investment. However, since that was my point of view, the cases have decreased significantly. And I appreciate the analogy between staff, which is staff, and contract staff. I mean, contract staff is different than staff, and we don't obviously have to get into that. And something that kind of stood out for me as we discussed the budget, and it really sticks in my mind. There's a page in the budget that says that the public defender, if you look at it in our budget, which we'll be looking at, has been reduced by 52% because of a drop in caseload. And to me, this is kind of the same argument. I'm not comfortable pulling the compensation down to $80,000. I could support something higher than that, and perhaps $90,000. Thank you, Mayor.
And just getting back to what Councilwoman Hanson said, then how do we deal with, let's say, somebody like the judge? The judge is presiding over cases. Do we now say that it depends on how many cases he's presiding over, and if crime goes down and he's not presiding over a lot of cases, then we're going to adjust his salary to how many cases? I just don't see that there's some model out there where towns and cities do anything like this. It's usually a straight contract for the services, and there's a lot more involved than just the cases. I really wouldn't like to set a precedent here where we're going to next start looking at the judge's contract and saying, well, crime went down, and if crime went down for the prosecutor, then cases also went down for the judge. So are we going to start looking at the judges and counting how many cases he did and what we think is worth for each particular case? I don't feel comfortable doing that at all.
Mayor, if I may, and I appreciate your analogy, and I've had that same thought as well. I think there's a difference between Mark, who's an independent contractor, and the judge. Despite the workload for the judge, he leads our court. He is responsible for managing that, regardless of the volume of cases. Therefore, I appreciate your analogy. To me, it's kind of like apples and oranges. Thank you.
Well, he's also, to that point, he's also managing the court, but he's presiding over less cases. And that's the only point that I was making.
I hear you.
Less cases.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Vice Mayor?
Well, to say that Mayor, respectfully, to say that you're surprised that we're doing this and this is somehow at the 11th hour or so, and I mean, this has been discussed and hasn't really been put to bed, and we haven't made any decisions. So to say that, you're surprised at the discussion and debate on this, I think is a little absurd. But you would expect to hear from Mr. Iacovino that his fee of $110,000 is reasonable. And as far as on a case-by-case for services, if Mr. Iacovino had 10 cases a year, we certainly would be scrutinizing this more if he's getting paid $10,000, well, $1,000 a case, $10,000 a case. My math is terrible. And I think it's important to point out as well, when Mr. Iacovino first came on, when he had an increase in cases, he came before the town and he spoke with the town manager at the time, and he asked for more money, which he got, because there was an increase in the cases that he was handling. And that happened 3 or 4 different years where he included in the letters that were provided, said that he asked for more money because of that. And we pay our town attorney on an hourly basis. We pay on an as-needed basis for our town attorney. So I don't think that compares. And we also pay our public defender as our court-appointed cases on a case-by-case basis. But I don't think it is on a case-by-case basis. What you should be looking at is the amount of work that's necessary under the circumstances, and I think the case drop is significant and it's continuous, and under the circumstances, I think it warrants a reduction. So with that, I'd make a motion that I will take Councilmember Brown's suggestion that we extend a contract offer for a fixed 2-year period at a rate of $90,000 per year, all other terms of the contract to remain as they are, to begin July 1, 2013.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And further discussion? And my comment in response to what you said is that I was taken by surprise because since our retreat, we have discussed this, and while we did discuss the possibility of in the future putting this out to bid, we also discussed, as Councilwoman Dickey reminded us, that Mr. Iacovino was going to be adding certain services that we had suggested we would like him to do, more contact with the schools, which he's done. I was at a meeting with the coalition. He has been working with them on anti-drug, and you can speak to the coalition. They will say that he has been outstanding in working with them and the students. So I think that those are the things we asked him to do in order to justify his contract, and he has, in good faith, done those and done everything we asked him to do. If we want to go in the future to look at putting this out to a bid, there's a lot of considerations that we have to look at that time, which would be level of experience and the quality of the prosecutor. But at this time, I just don't feel that it's fair to reduce a salary just because our crime has gone down. I think that's a good thing. I think we're paying for not only per cases, but we are paying for his full service. And he has also, in good faith, already done some of the things that we've asked him to do, more contacts with the school, and we had a whole list that we put together at our retreat, which he's taking care of. He's doing those things. So we asked him, do more for the money that we're giving you, and he did that, and now we're saying, well, that's not enough. I think that...
Mayor, I'd like to call for a vote.
I think that excuse me, I'm not finished. I think that I would consider looking at this at a future time, but I don't think that I have all the information necessary about how much services cost and what are the implications of reducing a salary to this much for a prosecutor. I don't know what other cities and towns pay for this. I have not had enough time to review that because I didn't think there was a possibility that we would be considering it. So I would be opposed to this motion.
Mayor,
Councilwoman Hanson.
based on the fact that Mr. Iacovino has already signed this contract, I would move to table this to give him the opportunity to take into consideration the new rate of pay and have the opportunity to review the scope of work and possibly modify it to where he feels it would be of the scope that would be with the new proposed price.
Right now, I have a motion and a second.
Mayor,
that was a motion to table.
And that was your motion to table. Okay. And yes, David, is hers first?
The motion to table takes precedence. You need a second for it.
All right. Can I get a second on the motion to table?
But Tate called for the question before that.
The motion to table takes precedence. The vote had not been called for yet by the chair.
Can I get a second on Councilwoman Hanson's motion to table? All right, then I will call for a vote.
Mayor, could I ask for clarification on the motion, please?
Sure.
What I heard you state was your opposition with going out with an RFP. I'm not sure I heard that in the motion. What I heard in the motion, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was reducing the contract salary to $90,000 and extending the terms to 2 years, and it's not an automatic renewal, and like the judge, it would probably have an evaluation period. But part of the motion was not going out to bid, so by voting on this, I am not voting to go out to bid. I'm voting on a reduction in the cost of the contract and the extension, really, which from 1 year to 2 year. Is that correct?
Just to clarify what I said that in the future, I would be willing to further discuss going out to bid.
Yeah. And I think this motion provides us an opportunity, Mayor, to do
Right,
that.
but I would not be in favor of changing this.
I understand that. I
Thank
understand that. Thank you.
All right. Bev, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Hanson?
Nay?
Councilmember Leger?
Aye.
Councilmember Dickey?
Aye.
Councilmember Yates?
Nay.
Vice Mayor Elke?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
And Mayor Kavanaugh.
Nay.
Mayor, 4-3.
Okay, at this time, I will open the public hearing regarding Resolution 2013-23, approving the estimates of expenses, assessments, and the tentative budget as the final budget, and the proposed tax levy for the 2013-14 fiscal year budget for the town of Fountain Hills. Ken?
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, again, it's $41,655,378 for fiscal year 2013-14. I'm not sure how much you want me to go into that. It hasn't changed. There were some modifications, but the bottom line is still the same.
Deb, do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
All right. Is there any council discussion? All right. And then I will close the public hearing, and we recess the regular session in order to convene our special session. Special session, roll call, please.
Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Councilmember Yates.
Present.
Councilmember Leger.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Hanson.
I'm still here.
Vice Mayor Elke.
Me too.
And Councilmember Dickey.
Here.
Consideration of Resolution 2013-23, adopting the tentative budget as the 2013-14 fiscal year budget for the town of Fountain Hills. Ken, you're up again.
And Mayor, members of the council, be happy to answer any questions regarding the presentation and the budget that's in front of you.
Do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Do we have any council discussion? Can I get...
Mayor, I have one thing to say just about the page with the changes that is in this packet. And just to clarify, when it says an increase to Extended Hands Food Bank, it's not really an increase from last year, same with the Boys and Girls Club, and that we discussed this as a council, we made an increase to the decrease from last year. And maybe next year when we move forward, we don't need to have this kind of a page, because I think what happens is we get presented with a budget, we talk about it, we make motions, we vote on it, and that becomes the budget that we want to adopt. So I don't necessarily think that this could be like a little bit of a confusing page. I guess I'm saying that word a lot tonight. But anyway, I appreciate that we would just be voting on the budget that we all discussed and voted on next year.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. All right, can I have a motion then?
Mayor, move to approve Resolution 2013-23, adopting the tentative budget as final for fiscal year 2013-14.
And second, please.
Second.
No other council discussion? Then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
All right, consideration of Resolution 2013-38, adopting and establishing the 2013-14 budget, implementation policy, and approving the town organizational charts, the 2013-14 pay plan, the schedule of authorized positions, and the employee job descriptions. Ken?
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, quickly. Again, as in any budget, there's guidelines that should go with that, so how it's administered. It does cover financial policies, financial planning processes, expenditure control guidelines, revenue and collection administration, user fee cost recovery, and debt service. It also, as per the town code 3-11H3, is the resolution requires the town council to approve the organizational chart and job descriptions, which that is part of this. It provides for a 1% COLA, 1.5% merit, except for topped-out employees. It also approves a pay plan for the fiscal year, which is the same as the current fiscal year that we're in. The review of the employee merit program was called for during the budget process, so we will be reviewing those in this coming year. Also, it authorizes 50.36 full-time equivalent positions, which means it's 39 full-time and 17 part-time positions. I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding Resolution 2013-38. It is a recommendation to approve it.
And do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
No. Any council discussion? Okay, then, can I get a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 2013-38 as presented.
And a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
All right, now we get to adjourn the special session, and I need a motion to adjourn it.
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Andrew said we had to do it that way, so I will now reconvene the regular session. Discussion with possible direction to staff related to any item included in the League of Arizona Cities and Towns Weekly Legislative Bulletin or related to any action proposed or pending before the state legislature. Ken or Councilman Dickey?
Just no point.
Okay.
What's the point? Yeah, legislature sine die, so not a lot other than what we already heard at the beginning of the meeting on all the subjects, so.
Okay. Sure? Okay.
Good job.
All right, do we have any speakers on this?
No, Mayor.
No. Okay, then we have nothing to do with that. Then any other council discussion?